The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Welcome to This Is Football, our latest show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Now, of course, you'll recognise all three of us from cherry picking recently, but this show isn't just about AFC Bournemouth. It can be about any football team across the country. It can be Manchester City, for example. In fact, it doesn't even need to be in this country. It could be about Real Madrid or the Brazilian League or the Saudi League if we want to. And it can be as far down as Dog and Duck Athletic. Let's call them that. You know. So, of course, I have got Matthew Harrison here with me. How you doing?
Yeah, well, good, Craig. It's a pleasure to be on this new show on the channel. Looking forward to talking all things football rather than just what we normally talk about.
Exactly, mate, exactly. And of course, we have got the star of this show, and that is Manny. He's shaking his head, but you are the star of the show, Manny.
Craig, sir, you flattered me far too much, and today's no exception. And obviously, you were telling me about this particular program covering all things football, and it's a new endeavor, and I'm sure I'd be happy to be a part of it. And we get to talk about a lot more things. It's probably a bit of a throwback to the old Saint and Greavesy show on ITV, and I am anxious and quite excited to see what we have in store tonight.
Are you Saints or are you Greavesy, Manny? Which one are you going to be?
To be honest, the two of you are the originals, so you'd have to choose among yourselves who'd be Saint and who'd be Greavesy. Me, I come right in whenever I possibly can.
No, you've got to be Saints or Greavesy, Manny. You know, Matt's just Ricky Gervais sat there in the corner.
Oh, you're being harsh on him.
Well,
you're being harsh.
I've been called worse. I'll take that. I'll take Ricky.
Okay. Oh, Ricky, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow our minds.
Yeah. That'll do me.
I suppose that'll make me Greavesy.
I was going to say, it's probably best you are Greavesy because I have seen Craig's left peg and he couldn't hit a barn door, so there's no way you can call.
Oh, come on. My crosses into that box were sublime.
But I would say Craig's closer to Barry Venison in front of goal than Greavesy, to be honest. But hey.
I thought you was going to say Barrymore.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, in terms of character and, disposition, Craig is definitely a Saint, so let him be the Saint.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manny. You're so kind. You're so kind, mate.
You're one to talk. But anyway,
let's get the show on the road and let's talk some football. And you know what we said just a minute ago? This show is not going to be about AFC Bournemouth. Let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur nicking one of our players.
It is about Bournemouth, at least partly.
Kind of. This first bit is, because it's come out on Twitter and also it's on BBC Sport now. The AFC Bournemouth have accepted a £55 million deal from Tottenham Hotspur for Dominic Solanke with 10 million in add-ons, whatever they look like. Now, of course, this isn't 55 million going into Bournemouth's pocket, though. Is it, Matt? It's I'm trying to work it out. Is this 17 million that's going to Liverpool?
Yes, roughly. It's 20%, isn't it? 10-20%.
Yeah.
Either way, Liverpool are. I'm sure Hughesy's at Anfield right now, rubbed his hands together, thinking that's a nice bit of easy money for the transfer kitty. But unfortunately, so a little bit disappointed that we got to wait for the 10 million in add-ons. But it's a disappointing afternoon all round. Possibly an exciting one if you're a Tottenham fan, but from a Bournemouth perspective, which this show apparently wasn't going to be about. It's a very disappointing afternoon because now we've got a goal scorer to replace some candidates in the squad. But yeah, I'd like to think maybe the club will use the Dom money to go into the transfer market, but we've got to wait and see. But yeah, disappointing afternoon, and I just hope from Dom's perspective that he carries on playing regular, and he's not, kind of benched a lot, because obviously he was getting the rub of the green at Bournemouth and scoring goals and playing regular. So I hope it doesn't do anything to his career. But you can't begrudge the player the move, can you, really, at the end of the day? I mean, he's a good professional. He was training yesterday with the rest of the squad. He looked happy. There's all pictures on the club website of him training yesterday. So he's been a model professional throughout. There's been none of this, I'm not training, I'm not playing, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. He's been a model professional, and fair play to him. I hope he scores goals at Spurs, but just not against Bournemouth.
Let's move away from the Bournemouth side of things, Manny, because and let's talk about, with regards to these add-ons, what do you think these add-ons are normally made up of? What could you envisage, a player like Dominic Solanke, having to achieve for these add-ons to be triggered? Because I guess this covers any club, really.
I think one particular issue with Solanke, Craig, is that there was a huge controversy, maybe not as big as that with other players, but there was a bit of a controversy that he wasn't picked to be a part of Gareth Southgate's squad for the European Championships, and Ivan Toney was among the strikers that were picked ahead of him. Of course, Ollie Watkins deservedly went, but I'm sure you and a lot of others were quite angry at seeing Solanke ignored, despite having a far more consistent season. But the fact that he had one cap back in the day and was never called again, there's something about managers like Southgate who seem to be reluctant to sort of rock the boat in terms of picking players in from the cold. It's another reason why a certain Ross Barkley couldn't make the squad, but now, of course, he's been snapped up by Aston Villa and will be playing in the Champions League. And so one particular add-on, I think, which could be considered, especially as I'm sure we're going to discuss England have a new interim manager, is the prospect of Solanke working his way into the England squad if he maintains his consistent form. Because now there's no way that you can overlook the bloke, given that he'd be playing for one of the more viewed clubs in the Premiership. And it was rather sad, really, that, if Southgate was willing to pick a few players from the likes of Crystal Palace to be a part of the squad, Adam Wharton, Dean Henderson, and a few others, he should have at least considered Solanke's consistency, the fact that he was right at the top of the goal-scoring charts. But now, of course, with a new manager coming in, someone who is probably... who will probably have a lot of divided loyalties, maybe in theory, because he was a former Irish international. And his first job, of course, will be managing against Ireland at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. It probably might be the start of a clean slate in some respects. Maybe some younger players will be considered. Maybe some players who were in the cold for quite some time could be brought back in. And I'd like to think that Solanke can count on his... efforts at Spurs to not be ignored, especially given that he now has a great body of work behind him at Bournemouth. And speaking of Spurs, obviously our dear friend Lokman Yunus Eugene, based in Kuala Lumpur, has sent me a message saying, no disrespect to Solanke, but I only hope that if he does come, he will do better than some of the other strikers who were there. And only wondering if Daniel Levy will spend a little bit more money. Maybe he's, you've had us chat with him, obviously, and know that he has no disrespect to any player. It's just his disillusionment with the whole structure with Tottenham. He's very much Levy out.
Yeah.
But, I think maybe if Solanke starts scoring and really proving why he, deserve to be there, deserve to be snapped up, maybe Eugen will change his tune. And I actually do believe that Solanke will now have some points to prove. I think a change will probably do him a world of good. It will probably bring him more into the public eye. He's also got European football to look forward to. But without him, what worries me, and I am going to go back to the Bournemouth issue, and I have to say this because, Bournemouth are a team that are now close to my heart for quite a few reasons.
Of course,
is that now, because in addition to having seen Solanke go, you've also now lost... Kiefer Moore. He was on loan at Ipswich, who are now back in the Premiership, but now he's gone back to the Championship to play for Sheffield United. So what worries me is your options for strikers.
Yeah.
I know you've still got Phil Bill, but, as Matthew said, hopefully you can do some business in the transfer market and find someone who can replace him. But Solanke's left a huge void. He's left a void.
Oh, he has. Yeah, he most definitely has in the side. One player as well that is on the move. Looks like it's going to be Pedro Neto of Wolves. He looks like he's going to Chelsea. £54 million has been mentioned. They've agreed that. A very, very good signing for them. One thing is, that I do want to throw out there, though, is because of the Euros, it feels like everything is being rushed through at the last minute, and it's not going to give the selling clubs much time to put it right. Now, of course, it's a big hole for us. It's a big hole for Wolves. Do you think it is going to be a quiet summer even after the season kicks off? Because I honestly do think it will be.
If I could go first and say this, in addition to the summer window, we do have another window in September. So that could also potentially be a good time for people to, when I say people, I say, managers and their clubs to sort of assess the situation with regard to what they need in terms of personnel and maybe try and get something out of it. And I wouldn't necessarily worry too much unless, of course, Andoni Iraola's boys go through a very bad start to the season where, they just aren't able to really get things together. And I know they had a horrible start to the season, but recovered excellently well. But then, lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice. But back to your question, I think that, as you've said, the fact that the Euros have taken place, and now obviously we've got the Olympic competition going on. In fact, as I speak, Spain are now leading France in the final. So it's bad enough that they've won the Nations League. It's bad enough that they've beaten us to win the Euros. Now they could win the Olympics. The reign of Spain continues in this game. But hopefully, there will be some opportunities in September for clubs to redress that balance. I agree with you, though, that it hasn't been a very, convenient state of affairs.
I'd be very, very worried if I was Gary O'Neill. Sorry to mention his name on this channel. How many times has it been mentioned on here in the past? I'm sorry. He's not paying me, guys. He's not paying me. Wow. At the end of the day, Wolves haven't got that much money, it's to be believed. But he's in more trouble with this sale because Pedro Neto was so important to them, and towards the end of the season, their season just fell off a cliff, didn't it?
Yeah, it's difficult there now for Gary. I think. I personally, if we go back to our tier list last season, which the three of us did, and I think I kind of pushed for Wolves to go down.
Yes.
I think this year it's going to be a real struggle for Wolves, especially with losing this player to Chelsea, because they haven't really brought in anybody that's kind of going to set the world alight, I don't think, have they?
No.
And it's, I think it's going to be a difficult season for the Wolves fans. Might surprise us, Gary might surprise us and pull on a bit of a masterstroke, but I think they're going to really struggle this season.
And thinking of the three teams that are coming up, they are better than the three teams that come up last season, aren't they?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I don't know what Manny's thoughts are, but
Go on, Manny. What do you think of them?
With Leicester, definitely. And I'm not just saying this because if Chris were watching this stream, he'd probably want to come after me. But, obviously, when you take a look at Leicester and how they performed under Maresca, we all remember that they started the season magnificently. At about the midway point, they were going great guns.
Yeah.
Had a huge slump, but then recovered in time. Now, my biggest worry is that although they managed to retain the core of that squad for the most part, although quite a few players like Kelechi, Iheanacho, and a few others have been released, they still do have the makings of the squad that could be spirited enough to stay in.
Yeah.
But why they saw it fit to hire Steve Cooper, I will never, ever know. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of Forest fans were quite glad to see the back of the Welshman because there were times when you thought that Forest's success in staying up was pretty much in spite of him and not because of him. And so Leicester could have gone for any other manager they wanted, any other good quality manager who would have loved the challenge of managing at the King Power Stadium with all of Leicester's history. And they went for Steve Cooper.
Yeah.
Is it really a closed shop, as Alan Kirbishley infamously once said? I don't know. And with Ipswich, this Ipswich team also, you'd like to think, given their status as founder members of the Premier League, unlike Luton, who actually missed out on being in the Premier League's first season when they got relegated, if we all remember correctly, Ipswich have always had a history of being able to play some very attractive football and really catching the eye. The sad part is that whenever they've gone through a slump, they've more often than not found it difficult to recover from that. It is, of course, exceptionally important that Kieran McKenna remains in the job because if he were to just walk away and leave Ipswich in the lurch, and I'm glad I don't think he has. I think he is staying put, has decided to stay put. So all the better for Ipswich. And they could also be one team that could surprise this season. And Southampton, I know that both of you are going to thumb your noses at them and say, well, somehow they managed to get up. It will be interesting to see how well they do, given that they came in through the back door. Of course, Luton came through the back door and were winning hearts, but it all went for naught.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, that when you take a look at the history of these clubs in question and the fact that they always seem to have a lot more to offer in terms of a fan base and, a Premiership history or what have you, you won't necessarily see these clubs struggle. The problem is the 17 teams above them, there have to be at least one or two teams that could give an impression that they will be ripe for the drop. And I don't know if it pains me to say this, but I do believe that Nottingham Forest, if they're not careful, they will be ripe for the chop and the drop. They've released a lot of players, but again, it will remain to be seen if they actually make something out of what they have. And there is, of course, some talk about a certain former Cherry and soon to be former Gunner moving there on loan. We'll have to see how that pans out. But back to the three teams in question, I think we're going to see a lot of spirit. I do believe that at least one of these teams will stay up. And you can clip me on this, you can quote me on this. Do not ask me now to be the soothsayer and say which of those teams will stay up. I really can't tell you. I do believe in my heart that Leicester might end up staying up because once they freshened their squad and brought some players in and also kept the existing core of some of their players who were involved in some of the better times, they could end up staying up as well. I'm sure they would have loved to have had Kasper Schmeichel back, but he's now gone north of the border all the way to Celtic. But I think Leicester might have the best chance of staying up. It will remain to be seen.
See, I think, just to chuck my 2 pence in, I've got a real good feeling about Ipswich. And I think the magic that McKenna's got there, and I think it was very important that he stayed there because he's done an excellent job there. I think in comparison to the other two sides, I think for me, it's and Ipswich have got a different spirit to like Luton. Like last year, Luton were really seen as the underdogs, weren't they? And everybody wanted Luton to stay up, I think, secretly.
Yeah,
I did because I thought, it was a great story, similar to our story, how they've come up through the leagues and administration and all that. But obviously, they just weren't quite there to get across the finishing line. I think in terms of the coaching style and his man management. I think that's the difference. And I think he can keep Ipswich up. Now, I mean, in terms of Leicester, are they getting a points deduction or are they not? Do we know yet? Or
Wow.
is it still
Any
going through and all that?
See, the thing is I'm on this front that I feel that points deductions shouldn't exist. I don't like them. They penalise fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is clubs that do things wrong, but this is a historical breach. This is a breach when they were in the Premier League last time round. They got relegated to the Championship. The EFL tried to do something to them. The EFL couldn't do anything to them because it happened on the Premier League's watch. Now they're back in the Premier League. Is it right to actually give them it's just a complete and utter bloody mess, really.
Mm.
Um, the problem is, and we'll come on to PSR, because we talked to it about it to death, but of course, I do want to discuss one other club that is in all sorts of mess. It doesn't make it a level playing field. We've seen Aston Villa having to be a bit creative, and I think, there's been a bit of naughtiness there. Kieran Maguire, of course, come on the show and was able to explain a little bit more about it. But yeah, I think it's probable that they're going to get a points deduction, which I think personally will probably bury them.
See, that's the
However,
thing. I mean, even if it's,
mm,
I mean, at first we were talking 15 odd points, weren't they? 14 points,
they
something like that.
can't do that to a
And,
newly promoted team. It
and
just ruins it.
they've done some. Kieran was explaining in the video you did with him,
Yeah,
explaining about those deals between them and Chelsea and trying to balance things. Very interesting, what
yeah,
he's saying. So it won't be so high now. But even if they get a 4, 5, or 6 point deduction, that's massive for a newly promoted side to start the season with. They've got to get 2 wins before they're even just back to 0.
yeah.
So, and if they're going to be, I can't see Leicester, storming and being safe, mid-table in the top half of the table. They're going to be in there with the battle, I think. So to have any kind of point deduction to start with is going to really cripple them. If that wasn't the case, then I think maybe Leicester would possibly stay up as well.
Yeah.
Saints, I know they've signed Brenton Diaz. He scored for him in a friendly the other day. But to be honest with you, even when Bournemouth were looking at him, I didn't really overly rate the guy, to be honest. But other than that, okay, Lallana's gone back there for a bit of a swan song. But, I mean, it's not a much different squad to the Championship squad. Also taking out Brooks and Fraser. I know they still want to do a deal for Fraser. So, yeah, I think without the points deduction, I think Leicester would have a good chance. But for me, I'm definitely going with Ipswich as a definite. I'm going to stick my neck on the line now and say Ipswich will stay up.
I'm with Ipswich as well. I think, to be honest, I spoke to Omid Delage, and, a great interview. I absolutely loved interviewing him because he's one of my favorite comedians. And it was a mix of, laughs, but also some serious conversations in there as well. But we discussed momentum. And momentum is a massive thing in football. Now, the problem is Ipswich coming into the Premier League is they are going to get hit by teams like Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and they're going to be hit by these teams because these teams have just got more resource than they have. If Kieran McKenna can turn it into a case of, right, okay, we're playing Nottingham Forest today. Today is one that we need to win. Don't worry about the 2 defeats against Manchester City and Arsenal, for example. I think Ipswich will be safe. They have got enough quality. They've got enough momentum, that I think they'll be okay. I think Ipswich will, Leicester, I was going to say. I think Leicester will really struggle because of the points deduction. Also, the expectation of last time rounds. Let's be fair, they did the fairy tale, didn't they? So I think they'll really struggle. And then there's Southampton. And do you know what? I don't know about you, Matt, but I don't want to see Southampton go back down because it's a local game for us. Bring it back to Bournemouth a little bit here. But I don't want to see Southampton go down. Mainly because, we've got this little rivalry with them, but it is a local game. But I don't think they're good enough. I honestly don't. I don't think they're good enough.
Yeah. It is handy to have a nice, easy away game to go to, but yeah, I'm not backing Saints really. I'm not overly bothered if they stay up or if they go down. But if it was between them and Leeds, I'd rather Leeds go down. To be fair.
Oh well, they beat them at the playoff final, didn't they?
Obviously, Leeds didn't get promoted this year, so hard luck. But
Red Bull Leeds.
Huh?
Red Bull Leeds.
Yes, Red Bull Leeds. But no, in fairness to Leeds, the kits that Adidas have done for them this year, their away shirts, especially the yellow ones, are real retro-looking shirts. A lovely shirt, but I wouldn't wear it.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Made me. But talking of shirts, I've just literally watched Umbro's promo video for Ipswich's shirt, their third strip, and it's a collaboration with Ed Sheeran. It's a lovely little pink number.
Is it?
Yeah, it's quite smart. But yeah, I'll let you two boys carry on because I'm taking over here.
I wonder if I just briefly, Matt. I wonder if Ed Sheeran's in love with the shape of that shirt.
Oh,
I'll tell you what, he knows it. He's got it already. Honestly. Do you know what I do like about Ipswich's shirt? I like their home shirt. I know it's ridiculous because it is blue. It's the same as, but it harks back to, can you remember when the first season in the Premier League, they were sponsored by Fissons, I think? I don't know what Fissons do. Haven't a bloody clue.
No, I don't. I know the shirt though, but it is actually based on that shirt, Craig.
There we go. That's why it looks like that then.
To my knowledge, I'm pretty certain I read an Umbro article the other day because I'm in contact with some people on Umbro, and they put a piece up on social media, and it was explaining about the Ipswich kit being based on that early Premier League shirt that you're on about. Which I think they had a black version of it as an away strip with like red trim and red collar. Exactly the same, but just flipped colours.
It's a nice shirt. Lovely shirt, that one. It's a lovely, lovely shirt.
All of Umbro's shirts have been pretty good, you know. Across the board, I think, this pre-season.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about something which a team that, well, to be fair, they've spent quite a bit of money, but they are back to square one with their takeover. They are building a new stadium. It's their last season in their existing stadium. You know who this is, don't you? It is the ongoing saga of Everton.
Craig's second team, Everton.
Do you know what? There is so many Everton fans that come onto this channel and actually show it love. Everton fans love us, don't they? They're just like us.
Yeah, and the blue guinea pig.
The blue guinea pig. I don't know where I thought of that one, Manny, but where do Everton even start? Because the thing is they have spent money. Farhad Bashir is still there. Everybody who's interested decides to disappear every now and again and take interests in other clubs. I think even the owners of Leeds took interest in them and then decided against them and go to Leeds, which, to be honest, is a strange move. But how deep is this wound at Everton, and is this new stadium really going to solve it?
If only I had an answer to that question. With Everton, you just get the feeling that they're also one of those teams that could be, sadly, in line for the drop. However, segueing back to your talk about Leicester's point deduction and how it could hurt them, Everton did have a points deduction, and I think there was some haggling and appealing which saw them get it somewhat reduced, but they still had that weight on their shoulders, that millstone, as it were. And they were still able to, find a way to survive under Sean Dyche. And, the football obviously was not very attractive, but when you're fighting to avoid relegation, beggars and borrowers have no right to be choosers. So I don't believe that Leicester would be affected as long as they have a more than decent start. And of course, Ipswich, as you boys, I know you boys are favouring them, but they do have a pretty difficult start facing Liverpool and Manchester City, not Arsenal and Manchester City. So, they're going to have to make sure they start really well. And as far as Leicester are concerned, we'll see how they do. But with regard to Everton, one of the best parts about having, my PC in front of me and Google on my laptop is that I get my computer on my screen is that I get to take a look and see how they potentially will start the season. And of course, they kick things off with a game against Brighton, followed by a trip to Solanke's new boys, Everton, and of course, a home clash where you lot will be travelling all the way to Merseyside.
Yes.
And that's at the end of August, right before the start of the September transfer window. So there are 3 games that are going to be played. Maybe that'll be enough time for some clubs to see where they're lacking and what they can possibly try and do in the following month. But Everton are going to have it all to do, and they are going to have to take a look at some of their players and really see what type of squad they want, what type of squad that Sean Dyche wants to work with, because several of those people, I think, will have already played their final games for the club the previous season. So I might actually go so far to say that, Everton don't really have necessarily too bad a start after that. After the Bournemouth game, they've also got... after the Bournemouth game, there's actually a 2-week break, in fact, I think, for the internationals. So on the 14th of September, they travel all the way to Unai Emery's Aston Villa. And then they don't really have too many big games against some of the bigger teams, although Aston Villa could perhaps be considered a big team now that they're in the Champions League. You might see them actually having a steady start to the season where they, get the points they need and need from the games they want. Would Tottenham and Aston Villa be write-offs away from home? That will remain to be seen. But I think that they might actually have a more than decent start. And one of the things about Everton is that, credit to them, regardless of the issues that were there last season, what Sean Dyche was able to do was tell his players to tune out all that ridiculous white noise and concentrate more on the football. And the results did show, as they ended up staying up at the expense of the 3 promoted teams last season. And I have no doubt that Dyche will be more of the same. Let's not forget that he was at Burnley for 10 years and only really left before the end of his 10th season when things really were starting to get a bit difficult. But the solid job that he's done so far, I'm not necessarily worried about Everton. But I will say as a caveat that if they do not make the most of the start that they have, if they don't get their act together immediately, they will find themselves in relegation trouble once again. And it really isn't going to be a pretty sight for the fans. How many more seasons can they put up with that?
Yeah, very, very, very true. But Dyche, and this is one thing I've always said, and I think Burnley suffered from this. Dyche is very good at keeping teams safe. The problem is when he actually leaves, it's very difficult to go back to some sort of sense of normality, which is what Burnley struggled with until Vincent Kompany took them into the Championship and really turned the side around. So I think when Dyche leaves, that's where the difficulty is. I think, he will scrape them through. I've just been thinking just a second ago, do you know what? This is a really random thought about Sean Dyche. Do you know what? I'm sure I've seen him on EastEnders for years. Haven't you?
I wouldn't know. I haven't watched EastEnders in donkey's years. You boys would know about that more than I do.
I was going to say,
lovely theme song, but I couldn't really get behind the program.
The last time I watched EastEnders, I think Nick Cotton was nicking off his old Dot.
Oh, Dot Cotton.
And do you know why? Butcher was in the car lot, and then you had the Mitchells in the Vic, and God knows, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw an episode of that.
You've ruined my joke there, though, Matt, because let's be fair, Phil is Sean Dyche, isn't he? Hello,
Mm,
hello, Peggy.
mm.
I tell you what, that's just the most terrible. The only reason I watched EastEnders was because of Zoe Slater, Michelle Ryan. You surprised by that?
No.
I've got the
Anyway,
rules
moving
up
swiftly
about
on.
3 times. Okay, yeah, moving swiftly on.
Moving swiftly on.
Moving swiftly on. Of course, football does start again tonight.
Oh
As you're
yes.
watching this, you will be able to watch a range of the games in the Championship and even one in League One as well, I believe. So
Mm,
you will be able to pick from Preston versus Sheffield United,
mhm.
Blackburn versus Derby. Oh no, sorry, Oxford versus Norwich tomorrow. But I'm sure there's another game. Oh, no, there's a League Two game as well. Barnsley versus Mansfield Town or Chesterfield versus Swindon Town. Watching
Mm.
any of those guys at
Yeah.
8 o'clock?
Do you know which one I fancy?
Go on.
Blackburn Derby.
Blackburn Derby.
Mm.
Do you know what? It'd be interesting because I think Derby might do quite well.
Mm. Yeah, I think I think that's the one I'm going to watch, and then Saturday I think I'm going to watch Pompey Leeds.
Pompey Leeds. Oxford will be an interesting one. See how they adapt. I think they're going to really struggle them. To be perfectly honest, I think sides that come up through the playoffs normally do, but historically they have been, believe it or not, they have been until when was it? No, to be honest, probably round about 1998. I think it was.
Yeah, I
Oxford
think
were
you're right.
always in.
The first time I went to the Manor Ground, the old Manor Ground,
Mm,
the first time I went there, I think John O'Shea was playing on loan for Bournemouth.
mm,
Um, so we're going back sort of 99 2000 season, I think.
yeah,
Um, so that was the first year I think I went to Manor Park. So I was about 14, 15 at the time. And they had come down from Division One, I think, the season before.
yes, yeah.
Um, but
Sounds about right.
they were always a club that were quite high in the leagues, weren't they? Oxford at one point.
Yeah, they were. I think, was it Robert Maxwell that got them to? Was it an FA Cup final? We're going back some now, aren't we?
To be honest with you, I'm not so up with Oxford as such.
No, it's to be
Uh,
honest, what a random topic this is. But at the end of the day, we did say we was going to cover absolutely everything.
But their new
And
stadium is nice. I mean, they built the Kazam Stadium, which I think is only three sides, and it's pretty much like Dean Court used to be when it was just three sides,
yeah,
and it's always stayed as a three-sided stadium. But now they've got plans to. I saw something briefly recently, some plans for a new stadium, which looks really good and impressive. But I'd imagine that might hinge on them keeping their championship status to maybe develop. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. But yeah, a lot of battles with Oxford over the years since they come down into the lower leagues. But yeah, it's nice to see them get back to the second tier of English football.
mhm.
Be
I,
interested to see if they stay there. Like you say, they do tend to struggle, don't they? Playoff.
I think they're going to find it quite difficult because, of course, um, do you know what? Their striker, he scored in the final. Who's it? Jacob Murphy. His brother played for Oxford. I think it's Joe Murphy. They both started off, I think, at Norwich City, didn't they? Is it Joe Murphy? I'm trying to think now. Um, Jacob Murphy. Yeah, Jacob Murphy plays for Newcastle, of course, but his brother um, played for Oxford. And of course, I'm trying to find Josh Murphy. That's it, not Joe Murphy. Sorry, Joe Murphy, whoever you are. But he now plays for Portsmouth, so he's gone from one promoted side to another. So I think Oxford are going to struggle. What do you think, Manny? You know, a newly promoted team into the Championship through the playoffs. That's going to be difficult for them, isn't it?
It could be, and as you said, you know, traditionally teams that come via the playoffs do tend to struggle. But you know, all we're going to have to do is sort of see how they go about things. That's really all I can tell you because I'm not really familiar with that. Just got to take a phone call, boys.
That's absolutely fine, Manny. You carry on. You
Well,
carry
just
on.
looking at the predictions, well, not predictions, but the odds. Sorry. And I didn't realise Luton and Middlesbrough, they're both 9-1 to win the league.
I'm guessing Leeds are top.
Which I thought were quite good odds.
Yeah.
Leeds are 11-4.
Yeah.
Burnley 11-2. But I think that's quite good odds actually for Middlesbrough and Luton, 9-1.
I think Middlesbrough will do quite well. To be fair, I think they might actually, you know, surprise a lot of people. So
Sheffield Wednesday 28-1.
28-1.
50-1. And then you've got Oxford, who we were just talking about, 100-1 to win the league.
I can't see Oxford being in the Premier League anytime
Portsmouth,
soon.
50-1.
Pompey might be one. Of course, Matt Ritchie.
Yeah, of course. You know that. You know, again, you know, he's done well for us, and hopefully he does well for Pompey next season. But I'll tell you one side I'm interested to watch is Plymouth. See how Rooney does there, because obviously his stint at Birmingham wasn't obviously great, was it? I mean, why a club decides to sack a manager who at the time, even though it was only after 10 games, was it, or 6 games or something, and they were 6th in the league, and they decided to make a change then and eventually get relegated.
Yeah.
For me, I think you'd be livid as a Birmingham fan, wouldn't you? Absolutely livid. So I don't think Rooney really got a fair crack of the whip there. Obviously did well at Derby. So it'd be interesting to see what he does with Plymouth. I think they were unbeaten during pre-season, Plymouth. I know pre-season doesn't really mean a lot, but if you go unbeaten during pre-season, it's always a good start for the league campaign. Maybe they did get beaten, but at one point I think they were unbeaten. But yeah, I've got an real interest to see how Plymouth do. I think, do you know what? Outside bet is another one I'll chuck on the line for you. Plymouth to make the playoffs.
No, not in a million years. I can't. I would completely bet against that.
They're 50. What were they to win the league? 1 second, sorry. They were Plymouth. They're 100-1 to win the league. And I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say they'll make playoffs. But then again, Leicester did win the Premier League, and no one. What were they, 1,000-1 to win it?
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened, so I don't know. I'm going to say Plymouth to make the playoffs in the Championship. Let's see if I'm right.
I think
probably miles off.
Do you know what? I would go for Plymouth to get relegated.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think Plymouth will get relegated. Honest opinion. I've just been having a look, actually. It wasn't, Oxford United. Now, here's a story for you. And actually, it links back to something that I got told as a kid. But Oxford United actually were promoted to the top flight, of course, Division 1 at the time, back in 84-85. So they went into the top flight. Now, Robert Maxwell was in charge at that time, and then he tried to merge both Oxford United and Reading together until, in very suspicious circumstances, as it says here, fell off a boat in Gran Canaria. So,
I remember that bizarre. Wasn't he trying to make
Thames Valley
big,
Royals, wasn't it?
yeah, something like that, wasn't it? Thames Valley, a big outside London club, wasn't he? And he had
Yeah.
ambitious plans for Europe and things like that, didn't he? Yeah, I do remember that story. That's yeah.
That's one way to piss off two groups of fans very, very quickly. Of course, the Reading fans weren't very happy because actually the stadium was meant to be in a place called Didcot, in between the two towns. The Oxford United fans, who Robert Maxwell was in charge of and had done well with, were pissed off because, of course, it wasn't called Thames Valley Yellows. They chose to use the Royals bit. So, yeah, Robert Maxwell pissed everybody off. And I think, the Reading fans have kind of taken claim that they pushed him off the boat in Gran Canaria. I think he just probably fell or something. And the Oxford United fans claim that they have. So nobody knows. I think he just fell off. I do. Or it was a shark. It was a shark in Gran Canaria. What do you reckon?
Wow.
Bloody great white.
I think for the Reading fans and Oxford fans, I'm just sure they're glad it never materialised.
I'll tell you what, well, whilst we're talking about the teams that have been dodgily taken over, have you seen the MK Dons today have had a takeover? And Peter Winkelman, or as one of my very good AFC Wimbledon friends says, Peter Wankelman has now left the building. So
yeah, he was inspirational in taking the old Wimbledon out of London, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, my uncle was actually a Wimbledon fan, an original Wimbledon fan. Used to go to the old Plough Lane, and he was part of the fan base that formed AFC Wimbledon. So I think he used to volunteer. I think he volunteered as like a secretary or something he helped out with. He now actually looks after the match day officials.
Yeah.
So he parks the team buses and then he takes the match day officials to the referee's room, makes some tea and that. And then he goes and watches the game, and he goes all the way from Poole to watch them home and away pretty much every week. And he's a big Wimbledon, the original Wimbledon, the Crazy Gan fan. And I think he just doesn't acknowledge MK Dons at all unless they actually play him.
Do you know what? It's quite
a massive grudge match. And but yeah.
Do you know what? I had a look, because I always follow that fixture because I remember it as growing up, and I thought, you can't do that. You can't move a team from one area to the other, and it's just completely and utterly wrong. But the one thing that I always remember, when I seen the fixtures, is neither of Wimbledon fans will not show the MK Dons crest anywhere. And I believe, Matt, they even had on the scoreboard, and they got done for this. AFC Wimbledon, I think they beat them as well. And then underneath, franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, there's a bit of hatred between those two clubs, to say the least. But yes, Peter Wankelman has left the building, or the very, very big building that he's built with only about 4,000 fans in it. Stadium MK. Have you ever been there? Because of course we played them in the cup. It looks impressive.
I mean, the first time we played them, it was like, from memory, it was like a hockey ground.
National Hockey Stadium, wasn't it?
It was a bit like the Withdean in some respects. I don't know if you ever went to the Withdean Stadium right before Brighton moved, obviously, to the Amex. Real weird setup. And yeah, then they built this nice, which is a nice stadium that they've got, but obviously they just don't get bums on seats, do they?
No.
But yeah, no, their first place that they were playing, I can't remember for the life of me. I think James Hayter scored, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. Was it National Hockey Arena, something like that?
Think so, National Hockey Arena or something.
I can't remember. So hockey's in my mind for some reason.
They were at
I mean, I'm
Selhurst
going
Park
back
for years.
2004, 2000. I think we might have played in the first game of the season.
I think they
I
moved 2002, didn't they? And they got relegated that season. They got relegated.
They got relegated twice. They got relegated in successive seasons, I think.
Yeah.
From what I can remember. But yeah, strange setup. But I mean, it's a horrible thing to do to a fan base, isn't it? It's take your football club away.
Yeah.
You know, terrible, terrible thing to do. But yeah, Manny's back. There he is.
There's Manny. There's Manny. We was just talking about MK Dons being taken over, and you probably remember the original crazy gang, the proper Wimbledon team, and we was talking about, of course, Robert Maxwell trying to merge Oxford and Reading years ago. MK Dons, though, is the real reason why it should never, ever, ever even be considered again, let alone happen again. But of course, they've just been taken over. Is there a way, considering the years that have gone past, that this new owner, who is Q80, so of course, he's come in with a fresh approach, can actually make this club likable, or is it always going to be forever stained?
Not too sure you can say that MK Dons is completely stained. Maybe with the new owner coming in to chart a different historical course, there could be some change. And, for what it's worth, the MK Dons still have a pretty big fan base in the UK. And there are some people who still enjoy going to their games. And let's also not forget that there were different incantations of Wimbledon. I believe, AFC Wimbledon was formed not too long afterwards, and then that ended up becoming, renamed Wimbledon again, for what it's worth. A little bit like how Fiorentina ended up going through all their problems, and they had to reform as Fiorentina Viola, and then they got their name back. And we also saw the similar thing happen with Rangers. They became Newco Rangers, and then Rangers again. With Wimbledon, it's rather sad, given its history, that they've seen it fit to sort of splinter like this. And you also get the feeling that, if there is going to end up being some sort of a merger, if maybe with an attempt to try to get the real original Wimbledon back, I'm not too sure necessarily if the fans of the clubs in question... What happened, mate?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I cannot see MK Dons and AFC Wimbledon ever being sat in the same room together. They hate each other when they're on the pitch. But what I do think is this new owner, so this new Q80 owner, gonna maybe drop the Dons name and call it MK City, for example. And will football forgive what's happened?
Hopefully, if the owner has some sense, he'll do nothing of the sort. And, it kind of reminds me of the fear of some of these American owners coming in and possibly, changing the names of clubs to the Knights or some sort. I don't really know if that will happen. I don't think the new owner coming in will be that half-baked to do that. And I think I remember speaking to you on a similar issue, Craig, about how important it is for new owners and new managers to try to form a relationship with the fans first before making any kind of a decision. Because football is supposed to be, of the fans, by the fans, for the fans, more than anything else. And if the fans aren't consulted on some of these major decisions, and the decisions are just made, that is a perfect recipe for unrest and distrust and all the horrible things that come along with it. So, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I know a little bit about the history, but not enough about the history to offer a real informed opinion. But, just off the top of my head, I think that really should be how things go from here on in. The owner will have to be very, very cautious in how he goes about his business.
Yeah, definitely.
And did you discuss any more stuff about while I wasn't here? I am sorry I had to shoot off.
That is absolutely fine, Manny. We was talking about Oxford United a little bit more, but I tell you what, let's
Just very quickly, right?
go on.
Okay, with the Oxford thing, I'm going to give you a list of clubs now, right? Okay,
Mhm.
Luton Town, Oxford, Stoke City,
Yep.
Chelsea,
Mhm.
and AFC Bournemouth. Who's the player? He played for some other clubs as well, but they're just the clubs off the top of my head. And I remembered this one played for Oxford City. So
Oxford City, not Oxford
Oxford
United.
United, sorry, not Oxford City.
um,
Bobby Moore managed Oxford City.
did he?
He did. He managed Oxford City, and he actually called Harry Redknapp up there on a Tuesday night, and I think he was asking Harry to become his assistant out there.
Yeah.
I think he was in between jobs or just come out of America or somewhere. And Harry tells you in one of his books I've got that he sat there on a bench on a Tuesday night at Oxford City, pouring down with rain, and he sat next to a World Cup winner who's managing a side in the non-league. It was just it was a good read, that actually. I think it was in one of his books. Yeah, I think it's got about 3 or 4 Harry books down there. But Bobby Moore, Oxford City. But yeah, who's that player? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you at the end when we finish. If you can't have a little think.
I've got one name, but then again, I think he's played for others. Yeah, I can't imagine
Go
it
on, then,
being
just
him.
tell me. Go on. Who?
No, but I'm trying to think if he's actually played for all the teams that you mentioned.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Do you want another clue?
Go on.
I think he had 2 brothers that were also professional footballers. And he is currently, I believe, or was a physiotherapist after he retired from playing.
Hold that thought. It's going to bug me. It's going to bug me. But I tell you what, we've got a few minutes left, so you don't have to wait long. But of course, one team making their debut in the Football League. And do you know what? I always love this. I always look out for these teams. Of course, Sutton United did it a couple of seasons ago. They're gone. Forest Green did it a little while back. They're gone. But I think there's something quite special about this lot. Bromley made their way through the playoffs. And I think, of course, beat Solihull Moors in the final, who, let's be fair, I think Solihull Moors will win the league next season. And I have got another prediction for the National League, but I'll save that for a moment. But I personally think Bromley will do all right next season.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of press about it, and they're really geared up and look pretty prepared, club wise. I don't know how prepared they are in terms of playing staff, but yeah, good little fairy tale. Who knows? Who knows?
To be fair, that National League is one of the worst leagues to get out of. Let's be fair. It is a nightmare to get out of. But Mally, how difficult is it for these sides that come into the Football League? Because Luton, let's be fair, got all the way from the National League into the top flight. I know they went straight back down, but there's other teams that have done quite well, isn't there?
I'm sure you must be thinking of a certain team from Wales, which happened to be backed by, the Hollywood duo. And, the nice thing about Wrexham is that obviously when they got into the Football League, thanks mainly to Ben Foster coming in and having a worldie of a season, when he probably, in my opinion, should have called it quits then and there, really, because that would have been a great way for him to end it. But he ended up starting the season. It didn't go at all well. He ended up retiring midway through. And I never like it when players retire midway through because, at least if he had stayed on, he could end up being a bit of a mentor and a guide to, the other goalkeepers in the squad who were picked ahead of him. And one of those goalkeepers who ended up coming in is a certain Arsenal youngster named Arthur Okonkwo, who has now joined the club permanently, I believe. And, there's a part of me that believes that, Fozza, who has his own podcast, as we all know, owed it to see that year out, especially given that when he was at Wrexham, he was very much the life of the party and the heart and soul of the team. And so you can't just, suddenly pack up your stuff and move away when things don't, turn out the way you'd like it. Okay, you can accept that you can't really play at that level anymore, and it might be better for you to sort of take a step down. But there's no reason why you still can't, stay with the team and train with the team and just be a source of support and try and get back to get them performing at a higher level, while also seeing if you can't maybe improve on your performances. But Wrexham have weathered that storm, and thanks in part to players like the Irish international James McLean, who was, of course, sounded out about a possible return to the Irish national team. I think, though, with a new manager coming in, that's been pretty much, ruled out. But McLean has been one of their more consistent players as coming in, and the management obviously have been able to weather the storm, and they've been really impressive in the way they've performed. Coming into the Football League, they won National League 2, I believe, and are now in League 1. So, I think more than anything else, if you take a look at the success of clubs like Wrexham and Luton and now Ipswich under McKenna, it's the momentum that gets them through in some cases more than anything else. We talk about how traditionally teams that come into a higher league tend to struggle, but it just goes to show that there's always going to be an exception to the rule. And maybe that's going to depend on how, the spirit of the club is and how well they play, how well they run, and how the fans get behind the team. With Luton, when they were in the Premiership, I just think, as beautiful as their story was, the whole controversy around the stadium didn't really help matters that much. And it was always going to be difficult as to whether or not they would actually sustain whatever they could get. And there are only so many games that you can lose closely before people start to think, maybe you just don't have the ability to get it over the line. And that's what happened with Luton. But with other teams, when they show their seriousness, they start really well. And of course, with Ipswich in that first season in the Premiership in 1992-93, they started the season magnificently and hit a purple patch. But by the end, they had slumped so badly that it was only when they beat their local East Anglia rivals, Norwich City, that they, avoided getting relegated. But I suppose well begun in some cases can be half done. And that's going to be the issue with some of these teams coming into newer leagues. They've got to try to start well, not so much live on their laurels from the previous season, but just focus on what they have to do better, but what they can still do well. And if they can do that, they'll be fine. Sadly, Burnley, Luton, and Sheffield United failed to heed those lessons, and that's why they're back in the Championship, having just come into the Premiership. Now they've gone back down. You don't like to see clubs going through that revolving door.
Most definitely. What I was going to say as well, I do have a prediction for the National League. We will touch on Lee Carsley in a moment as well. But my predictions, so I think Solihull Moors will actually go up. We'll have 2 new Football League teams, though. And there's a reason behind this. Anybody know about Max Kilman? Of course, has gone from Wolves.
The Wolves skipper, right? Yep.
Yes. He's actually made his old club, Maidenhead United, £4 million, which, to be fair, is quite a chunk at that level.
Ooh.
And they've already done very, very well to get themselves into the position they are. And I believe they might actually do that. So I'm going to go Solihull Moors and Maidenhead to get themselves into the Football League. be some story. And actually, I think, somebody might be able to confirm this for me in the comments. I think they've actually got the oldest ground in the whole of football. I might be wrong. Maidenhead United. I'll have to Google that afterwards. But let's talk quickly about Lee Carsley, because I know that we've spoken to him on a number of occasions. Of course, he's been confirmed today to be the interim boss for a number of games. Firstly, do we think that this is going to be following the Spain model? Or do you think that we need somebody who's been managing a Premier League team to actually do it? Basically what I'm trying to say here is, can we really follow the Spanish model? Is it really possible with our style of play and how different we are?
I don't know whether it's a case of following the Spanish model. I mean, I personally think Lee Carsley has been given this interim role as a dress rehearsal to see how it does. And I think that the FA will continue to work in the background, assessing other potential candidates. Obviously, the first two games in the Nations League against Republic of Ireland and who was the other one they're playing?
Oh, do you know what? This is
Finland.
Finland, is it?
Finland.
There we are.
So I think, if he starts off badly with those two games, I think the FA might step up, a replacement. But I personally think this is his dress rehearsal, and I think they're going to keep. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in charge of the 6 Nation League games that we've got coming up before Christmas. There's a lot of talk about, and it was on Talksport earlier today before I joined them on there, and they were talking about potentially Lee Carsley being an interim charge until Pep is free. So yeah, there's a lot of different talk. Like Eddie Howe, I would love to see Eddie Howe as England manager, but I just can't see the FA paying a compensation fee of that amount that Newcastle will want for his services. I mean, okay, Southgate. I know between the three of us, we've all got very, very different opinions on Gareth Southgate, but it kind of worked, and I can see this FA going down the same path again. Because if I remember rightly, he only got the job on an interim basis, didn't he, Southgate?
Yeah.
And then obviously got it permanently. So I think that the FA are still doing things in the background, but I think this is a kind of let's see how you do. And if he picks up results, I think he'll end up with the job.
It's a dress rehearsal. An easy dress rehearsal.
Yeah, but it's not that it'd be my first choice.
Yeah.
Personally, but I just think that's the way the FA will go.
It's interesting, whether or not, but of course they've mentioned Pep on Talksport today. Of course, we are the Talksport channel of choice for AFC Bournemouth, so they've mentioned Pep on there. The Eddie Howe talk has kind of quelled a little bit. It's gone a bit quiet, but there's no reason why it couldn't spark up. The thing that concerns me is the typical England thing of we can beat the likes of Finland, we can beat the likes of, all these sides, and then we come to Spain, France, Germany, Italy. We can't say the Dutch because we beat them, but the thing is, we come to those sort of teams and we go, just shirk at it, and that's what we can't do. That's why I'd rather, when this new manager, or I'd actually like a friendly against a team like Brazil or Argentina or somebody like that to be set up to really test Lee Carsley and go, there we are. You're out there with the Wolves. not literally Wolverhampton Wanderers, to be honest, that wouldn't be too hard for him. But, thrown to the Wolves and see how he gets on against a traditionally strong country.
Yeah, I can see your logic behind that.
If I could just say something about Carsley briefly, it's good that he's got the job, at least now on an interim basis, and it might be fair to say that this could be an audition. Interestingly enough, though, they're going to be coming up against an Irish team which had its own interim manager in, of course, a certain ex-Bournemouth player, as you both know. He was in charge for about a couple of games after replacing the, Stephen Kenny, who was an absolute disaster, it has to be said. And he was deemed to have done well, but the FAI for once decided to loosen up their purse strings and get a new manager in, and not just any manager, but the Iceland manager who knocked us out of Euro 2016. So I just wonder if for the likes of certain players like, Rashford or Sterling, who were part of that 2016 vintage, whether or not it'll be a case of deja vu coming up against that same gentleman. Now, what appeals to me about Carsley is that he is easily an upgrade on Gareth Southgate, because Southgate got the job without any real qualifications at all. I mean, I don't even know what sort of success he had with the youth team, really. And somehow he was promoted. He was promoted from within, a case of jobs for the boys, and they ended up, giving him their chance and his chance rather, and he ended up taking it. And because it wasn't broken, they decided not to fix it. Now, the one issue I have is that although Lee Carsley would easily be an improvement on Gareth Southgate any day of the week and twice on a Sunday, I just wonder if for England it would be a case of once bitten, twice shy, because they've probably thought, in as much as it would be tempting to, go with the Spain model and hire that coach who has done brilliant things with the youth team and see how well he works with the senior team, and to see if he can't, use the players he worked with, the likes of Cole Palmer and Ben Chilwell and others, and bring them into the fore, and see if he can't work his magic there. And of course, as I did mention in a previous stream, and Craig, you'll remember this, if you were to put glasses on Mr. Carsley, he'd be an almost doppelganger for Luis de la Fuente.
Yes.
But when you take a look at some of the other candidates that have been mentioned, I think I might have mentioned it as well, they don't really inspire much in terms of confidence. And Jurgen Klopp, probably the best of those candidates, has made it very clear that there's no way he'd consider taking the England job. So what are the options that you have? And I think it just wouldn't really be fair to think of to try and talk about a better option when there are no better options available. The one option I could think of that would really work would be Thomas Tuchel, but would he be willing to take up that option? I don't know. Eddie Howe, so many question marks. Graham Potter wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. And I really can't think of anyone else. And it's a sad time when, it really is slim pickings with regard to the players, the managers we've got available. So I'd like to think that Carsley will have an audition. But one thing which I would like to see Carsley do is, and this is going to be a very controversial thing to say, but it has to be said, he will have to use these 2 games to give Harry Kane a golden, glorious farewell with 100 caps, and then say, thank you, skipper, be on your way. And do the same with the likes of Kyle Walker and others. Because it's clear to me that some of these players who have earned in excess of 70 or 80 caps, especially if they're on the wrong side of their 30s, are now very much on their last legs. And it is time to freshen up the squad a little bit. And I would like to see some of the players who were, harshly chopped, who still have a lot to offer, be given away back in. Grealish, Rashford, not Henderson. Yeah. I don't think he'll play in the Premiership again, and maybe he should, take a step down and play in the lower league and then call it a day. I think, it was a bit of a shock in the end for me that he wasn't picked, but that should be the end of his top flight career. But there are some that should be considered should be brought back in. The same way De La Fuente brought back the likes of Jesus Navas to add some experience to the team, and it worked a bit of a treat. Navas is now the only member of the World Cup winning squad in 2010 to be a European champion, if memory serves me right, in 2024. So I'd like to see Carsley start to stamp his mark and try and build a new team. And he will have to end some of their careers. Some of those people are going to have to be given a golden handshake and sent on their way. And if the FA are willing to see that he's willing to, take that plunge and really start wielding the knife and stamping his mark, then that could be a sign that, it's time to move into a new direction. That's what Luis de la Fuente did by getting rid of Sergio Ramos. With an Irish connection, it's what Mick McCarthy did as soon as he became Irish manager by getting rid of quite a few of the guys who played with him at Euro 88 and Italia 90. And he said himself in an interview with Eamon Dunphy that it was a tough thing to do because they were his close mates, his teammates. He had played with them. And to tell them that their services were no longer required was in some ways a heart-wrenching thing to do, but it was the right thing to do so that Ireland could move forward. In the same way, I think England needs to move forward. And I think the job, interim as it may be, it could very well be Carsley's to secure permanently. And I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, most definitely.
Just to touch on one thing there, with what Manny's saying about, the old guard, I totally agree with that. I think it is time now that some of the players, like he says, are given a golden handshake. Thank you very much for your service. And, you won't be picked anymore. But the other interesting thing with Carsley is that he has brought through the likes of Palmer, Mark Gay. He's worked with, is it Rico Lewis?
Yes.
Young kiddie at City. And he's worked with the young kiddie at Liverpool that was in the provisional squad.
Harvey Elliott.
Him. And also begins with a Q. His surname begins with a Q.
Yes, Kwanzaa.
Thank you.
That's it, yeah.
He's worked with a lot of the players also that haven't quite made it into the squad yet and have made it into the squad yet. So it will also be interesting to see if he does shift some of the old guard along, which, like Manny was saying, I totally agree with that. It's going to be interesting to see how he integrates some of the youngsters in there as well. And, the likes of Cole Palmer have worked with him. Mark Gay, that's another one. He's worked with him as well. So he knows a lot of the players that are already there. And he also knows a lot of the players that he can put in there. So it's going to be interesting over the next few games. And if he gets the job permanently, it's going to be, I think, a new England in some respects, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. Well, before we round it up, I think, Matt, you're going to have to give us the answer.
For the player?
Yeah, I was thinking of one man, but,
just say it.
I don't think it is. I think I'll make myself look like a bit of an idiot. I'm sure it's not.
Go on.
No. Honestly, I'm sure it's not. 100% sure it's not. So, go on.
Has Manny got an idea? We all know Manny's.
Nope. I'm
so what was the club? Sorry, Manny, you said.
I'm just as clueless on this as all of you are, to be honest.
So, Luton, Oxford, Stoke City, Chelsea, Bournemouth. Did I say Oxford City again? Oxford United.
Oxford United.
So, Luton, Oxford United, Stoke City, Chelsea, Bournemouth. And I think at one point as well, as another clue, he had the consecutive goal scoring record in the Premier League until Ruud van Nistelrooy broke his record at the time.
I know who it is. I know who it is now.
Go on then.
Mark Steen.
Mark Steen. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was questioning. I did think it was either him or one other. But I'm not going to say who the other is because that one was completely wrong. But yeah, I'll take that for a win. But yeah, No, I'll tell you what, it's been a great show, great fun as always. It's a bit of light relief, on Up the Cherries in all departments. So, yeah, please hit the subscribe, the bell button, all that jazz. If you want to become a member, you can become a member now. It starts from 99 pennies, so it's not very expensive. And of course, we are on Spotify and all your audio podcasts as well. So do check us out. But from me, Matt and Manny, thank you again for joining us. And we shall see you all soon.
The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.